First, though, President Trump is cracking down on foreign relations. The Trump administration preparing to levy new sanctions on Iran's missile testing, according to the Associated Press. This comes in response to Iran's recent test firing a ballistic missile. Trump tweeted this moments ago, saying, "Iran is playing with fire. They do not appreciate how kind," in quotes, President Obama was to them. Not me, exclamation point. Republican leaders like House Speaker Paul Ryan supporting tougher sanctions. Listen.
I would be in favor of additional sanctions on Iran. I think I'd like to put as much toothpaste back in the tube as possible. I think the last administration appeased Iran far too much. Iran writes on their missiles in Farsi, Hebrew, and English, "Death to America, death to Israel," and then tests them. So this is not a friendly country that has global peace or national security interests in their minds.
Joining us right now is former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. Ambassador, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be with you.
Many sanctions imposed on Iran were lifted as part of the Obama administration's Iran deal. Should the president reinstate sanctions and crack down on Iran now?
Well, sure, sanctions are fine, but let's be clear. The previous sanctions regime did not affect Iran's nuclear weapons program. Let me just say it again. The sanctions did not affect Iran's nuclear program. Did they want to come to the table to negotiate to get rid of the sanctions? Sure. If somebody were slapping you in the face every day, wouldn't you want that to end? The question is, what would you give up to have it stop? In Iran's case, they got the sanctions lifted with essentially no requirements on them that slowed the nuclear program down. I think the more important signals here, the statements by Mike Flynn that Iran was on notice, the statement by President Trump yesterday that nothing was off the table, and goodness, that tweet just a few minutes ago, hello, we have a different policy on the Iran nuclear program. So if I could just make one point about the New York Times, they have an editorial masking as a news article today, essentially saying, you know, the Obama policy is now essentially being continued by the Trump administration. The article is drivel. They cite the sanctions point on Iran as indicating the continuity. I don't think there could be as dramatic a difference between two policies as precisely on the Iran nuclear program.
I'm really glad you mentioned that article, Dagan, because the New York Times is acting like Donald Trump is following President Obama, and we know these policies are 100% different.
Absolutely, and speaking of that tweet, Donald Trump's tweeting about Arnold Schwarzenegger, Iran, and the Prime Minister of Australia in the last few minutes. If you can keep up with the news.
Oh my God.
Iran is playing with fire. They don't appreciate how, quote, kind, unquote, President Obama was to them, not me. Ambassador, what does this say, though, about if you're the tough talk on Iran from the Trump administration? What does it say also about Russia? Because people thought that, because when you go after Iran, a critical ally of Russia.
Yeah, well, I think it's why the administration needs a comprehensive strategy here. And I note with certainly my approval for what it's worth, Nikki Haley's speech in the Security Council yesterday saying that American policy was still, we did not recognize Russian annexation of the Crimea, and presumably that the sanctions imposed after that should continue. And it does tie in with the Russian-Iran relationship here. So I think rather than making policy through statements and speeches, hopefully there is a grand strategy behind all this. And if there is, it's not going to look at all like the Obama administration policy, even with respect to Russia, that's for sure.
But what about his overall approach to foreign leaders? I mean, the president acknowledged his calling foreign leaders yesterday. Watch this, Ambassador. Got to get your take.
Any attack on the United States or on our allies will be defeated, and any use of nuclear weapons would be met with a response that would be effective and overwhelming.
That was Secretary Mattis on top of the president just tweeting the latest on the situation with Australia. He says, "Thank you to Prime Minister of Australia for telling the truth about our very civil conversation that fake news media lied about. Very nice." Ambassador, what do you make of the back and forth that's been playing out between President Trump and the Prime Minister of Australia? And then there's the relationship or the rapport with Mexico's leader. How has he done in this first 12 days in terms of his outreach to foreign leaders?
Well, let me take 1 second on General Mattis's comments, which are also long overdue. To me, much like Mike Flynn on Iran, what Mattis has said to North Korea for the first time in 8 years is, we understand your game just like we understand Iran. Now, let's take the conversations with the leaders of Australia and Mexico. You know, Americans have always seen plain speaking as a virtue, even in diplomacy, if you can imagine that. And I tell you, there's no nationality on earth that's more plain spoken than America, other than Australia. So I think they probably had a pretty direct conversation. I think Trump was unhappy with the Obama agreement about taking in the refugees who are in these camps on Nauru, which is a small island independent nation where Australia has a refugee camp. Let me tell you, Australia's policy on immigration and refugee asylum is very, very tough. Very tough. You might even say it's Trumpian. So if the two leaders of Australia and America had a direct conversation, sounds to me like most conversations I've had with Australian political leaders and diplomats over the years. And with respect to Mexico, you know, the president's press spokesman said that it was a kind of lighthearted comment about the use of force. Use of American military. Look, there are going to be some direct conversations. There's a new president. There's a new president. You know what we call that in America? We call it constitutional government. Get used to it, rest of the world.
Yeah, there, boom. Ambassador, good to see you. Thanks so much.